Hey, everybody, a special welcome to Living Out Loud 2.0, or if you're joining us from the CNP platform, I am so excited today to have Mr. Machel Hunt, who is a relationship counselor and psychosexual therapist. Originally from London, he now resides in Atlanta, and he also has a practice here. So we're going to talk about all things Black, LGBTQ, relationship oriented, and hopefully get a lot of questions answered around therapy and how it can help us heal and move us forward in our relationships. So welcome, Machel.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you. Welcome to your audience and, people around the world that listen and watch. And I think it's such a great platform that we have where we can talk about things that are really specific and completely necessary to our community. So I'm really happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in because I know our time is limited. So let's start here. I always say that I feel like there's so much untreated trauma in our
Oh,
community, and we don't take the time to really unpack that
yeah.
trauma, and it affects every area in our lives, especially our relationships. So what kind of work do you do in terms of unpacking that trauma that your clients bring in?
I'm so excited that you mentioned that because that's something that's one of the things that really kind of pushed me into becoming a therapist, because I feel that and we're speaking specifically about Black gay men, we are so beautiful in our presentation. We're so beautiful in our love. We're so beautiful in our grace, but it's all shrouded in trauma. For many of us, trauma is just kind of how we it's kind of what we're born out of, this idea of dual personalities, this idea of hiding who we are, this idea of not being celebrated for who we are, except when it's related to sex and our sexual prowess, or maybe our fashion sense, or maybe our creativity, which is very one-dimensional. So that in itself is traumatic.
I want to pivot for just a minute and talk about dating and sex.
Right.
As a Black gay
My
man,
favorite topic.
I know, and I'm newly single, so I'm navigating dating again for the first time in years, and it's tough out here. It is tough out here, I will say that. But there's also this persistent narrative in the Black gay community, and this is something that I talk and write about a lot. And it's that two Black gay men can't be in a successful long-term relationship. And it seems like the blueprint for success when it comes to gay relationships are interracial couples or just white couples, period. And I really reject that idea that two Black gay men can't be in a committed relationship because I've seen examples of it. There's examples of it in my own life. So I just want you to speak to that and speak to how we can shift our perception of what is possible for us, and the whole narrative around dating as a Black gay man in Atlanta specifically has such negative overtones. So just speak to any of what
Right.
I just mentioned because it's
I
a
mean, you you
very
you,
broad
men- you
topic.
you mentioned a lot, but I'm
Yeah,
happy you mentioned it because it's all very important.
yeah.
So the first thing I want to say is that anything's possible. You ask what's possible for us as Black gay men in relationships. I think anything's possible. I think you can have the most amazing relationship with the most beautiful Black man. You can have amazing family. It's possible, but you have to be ready for that. There's lots of people who want to be in relationships with someone else when they have difficulty being just with themselves. Their own self-purpose is not there. They don't have the necessarily value systems that will allow them to be the best version of themselves. So their relationships are not going to work out. There's also this idea that we see people in relationships and we assume that they have a good relationship, or we assume that they're happy, or we assume that they have a healthy union, when that could be the farthest thing from the truth. So I think we need to be able to not necessarily look outwards and say, oh, I want what he has, or I see this white couple and they look like they're really good together, or I see this mixed race couple and they look happy. We don't know what's going on in their relationships. But what we do know is that in order for you to have a healthy relationship with anyone, it begins with a health and emotional well-being that you have for yourself. So the narrative that, you know, it's hard dating in Atlanta, absolutely it's hard dating in Atlanta. It's hard because we're all trying to find ourselves. We're all trying to find ourselves. And I talk to so many different men, and they're like, you know, I'm single, I really want to be in a relationship. And I'm like, okay, so I'm talking to 100 men, and 100 men are saying they want to be in a relationship. That's 50 couples right there. Where's the disconnect? And the disconnect is that we're all trying to find ourselves, and we're trying to project that onto someone else. And you're not going to be in a successful relationship. You cannot be in a successful relationship or a healthy relationship until you're able to be with yourself in a healthy way. So recognizing what your limitations are, recognizing what you need to work on to be the best version of you, being happy with being alone. A lot of people will be driven into relationship just for the mere fact that they don't want to be by themselves. They find it incredibly hard to be by themselves. So you'll speak to them at the beginning of the year, they're in a relationship, and then at the end of the year, they're with, you know, someone else, you know, or two people in between that time. And you're like, you know, you haven't really taken the time to think about who you are and how you want to be seen in the world. And then also we have this issue within the gay community where our value systems are so skewed. You know, we value material possessions, we value accolades, we value, and it's not just the gay community, because we live in a city and a country and a society that values these things. You know, we live in a world where if someone's broke, that's the worst thing they could be. It's like I sit around at these brunches and hear people talk about broke people, and I don't want to be broken. But you're not broke, but you're broken. And if you're broken, you cannot be in a healthy relationship. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. It doesn't matter what designers you're wearing. It doesn't matter who you're friends with or which celebrity you're associated with or how many followers you have on Instagram. A broken person is never going to be good for anyone else.
Broken. So how does one sit still and get clear about what they need to do, the personal work that they need to do in order to be whole and in order to be ready for a relationship?
The fundamental issue that we have as Black gay men is that our value systems are skewed. So even in order for you to recognize that you need to take some time out to really reflect and, you know, acknowledge and build, it's difficult for us to think about that. Because what we're thinking about is, where's the next party going to be? Who's my next sex date? You know, what clothes am I going to wear? What picture am I going to post on Instagram? How many followers am I going to get? What does my friends think about me? You know, what does the stranger think about when I go out? Who am I going to go out with? Those are the things that have consumed our kind of consciousness. And what we don't do is to say, actually, how am I feeling today? How have I felt for the last 5 years? You know, what can I do to shift my projection onto other people and begin to start looking inwards at what I need to do to be the best version of myself? I always ask people to do this. If you strip everything you've accumulated, all the friends, you know, all the degrees that you have, all the material things, if you strip all of that, what do you have left? What do you have left, and what do you have of value that's left? And if you on your own without all of those things have no value, then you're never going to be well.
Machel, okay, so you just read me and a whole lot of other people, just so we're clear. The library is open. Okay. Okay. I know, as someone who lives in the South, who was born and raised here, there's this stigma attached to therapy. So often folks in the Black community will say, oh, you know what, just turn it over to God, just pray about it. But I believe that spirituality and therapy can coexist. So can you kind of talk to us about how we can get brothers to move beyond that and get into therapy?
Right. I think that's such an important point. And what I hear all the time is, you know, Black people traditionally don't go to therapy, but as a practice in Georgia, 75% of my clients are Black. So I think that kind of stigma is slightly moving away, and the myth that Black people don't go to therapy, even though it's traditionally what we've been accustomed to, I think people are moving away from that. Trying to take people away from what's been their belief system for a really long time is not necessarily what therapy is trying to do. So what therapy does is saying, okay, we acknowledge that this is the tradition that you've come with. We've acknowledged that religion and spirituality can be quite challenging to your self-perception, particularly as a Black gay man. However, this is a way that you can still hold on to the traditions that you've been raised with, but learn how to not have it impact you in a negative way. One of the things that I found really helpful is for Black gay men to see someone like themselves. As a Black man dealing with, any kind of issues, whether it's, unconscious or conscious, whether it's long-standing or, triggered by some immediate trauma, seeing someone who you feel can identify with where you've been or where you're at is one of the things that move therapy along. So I think me being a therapist for the Black community, it really helps to kind of open up the doors for Black men and Black women to say, actually, you know what? I can do this. I see someone that I can identify with. And there's lots of research that suggests that as well. The therapeutic alliance is stronger with someone that you feel can identify with your background and your position. So.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I spoke to a group of Black gay men yesterday, and one of the barriers that they said they had towards getting to therapy was finding a culturally competent therapist, somebody that looks like them, that reflects their experiences.
Yeah.
So how does one even go about finding a culturally competent therapist?
I can be very frank with you. There's some therapists who will brand themselves as culturally sensitive, but they're not. And I also believe that even as it pertains to race, you can have someone who's from the same race, identifiably, but have different cultures and different ways of viewing things. Christianity, religious beliefs also plays a part in finding that is by asking questions. And I think, with any doctor-patient relationship, sometimes patients don't necessarily advocate for themselves and they don't feel they have the autonomy to do that. So I would encourage people to be very curious about your therapist. Ask questions. Ask them what they're, I don't necessarily think training is most important, but definitely experience is important. So what experience have you had dealing with someone like me, for example? So if I was seeking a therapist and I was a Black gay man who's dealing with, sexual compulsive disorder and, maybe I've dabbled in the porn industry for a while, and maybe I have difficulty with my parents because they don't accept my sexuality, I would ask that potential therapist, do you have any experience in dealing with a Black man who has sexuality issues, who's had issues with compulsive disorder, who has issues with family? Have you had that experience? And how did that work out? So just be very, very, very in tune with what you are going through, and making sure that the therapist that you're asking to see or paying to see has some experience in dealing with that, and not be afraid of asking those questions, because I think sometimes as patients or as clients, we often seem to think that the person we're going to is going to help us, but we have to kind of help ourselves along the way. And one of the ways you can help yourself is by asking those questions up front.
That's really great advice, particularly around specific issues, challenges that we face as Black gay men. I have one last question before we begin to wrap things up, because I know you have to go. I would be remiss not to mention sex in terms of, relationships and sex in terms of monogamy and open relationships. It's a hot topic that I know a lot of Black gay men are discussing, and there's a lot of shaming around couples who choose not to be monogamous. Clearly, there's
Right.
more than one way to be in relationship. But I feel like so many of us are stuck on this heteronormative model that's failing heterosexual couples, but yet we adapt that model
Yeah.
because we don't really have our own model for success.
Right.
So can you talk to that?
I can talk about that all day. So, first of all, it's not heteronormative anymore because there's lots of heterosexual couples who have consensual non-monogamous relationship, and they've been having that for a while. Well, I would say it's more of a traditional model.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than just being heteronormative, I think it's more traditional, this model of monogamy. And it's actually coming out of religion. Our religion, particularly Christianity, says, it's one person with another person, and that's how you have a relationship. That's how a traditional relationship should be. So I think, unfortunately, as Black gay men, we do hold a lot of traditions that we've been raised with, and that's not a bad thing. It's not bad that you want to have a monogamous relationship. It's not a bad thing that you want to ascribe to what you see your parents have, or your grandparents, or just people you grew up having. But you have to know what's right for you. So for some people, monogamy is just not right. Monogamy isn't right for everyone. But rather than having a relationship where someone's sneaking out behind your back or doing something which can be unhealthy in so many ways, I suggest to couples, have the discussion, talk about what your needs are, talk about, what your sexual fantasies are, talk about what excites you, because you can love someone and still not be excited by the way you enjoy sex with them. You can love someone and still not be entirely pleased by the way you have sex with them and the kind of sexual activities you have. But in order to be able to do those, to have those conversations, you have to work up to knowing yourself. And I always say you have to be honest with yourself before you can be honest with anyone else, what that means. And I think moving into our future, moving into 2021, I would like people to be honest about what their needs are. And if you are with a partner, just make sure that you're saying to him exactly what your needs are. And if you don't know what your needs are, then you shouldn't be trying to figure out in a relationship, because you're wrapping someone else up into your life while you're still trying to figure it out. So consensual non-monogamy is amazing. There's that shaming, but then there's also bottom shaming that happens a lot in our society as well. And I'm like, well, if you're shaming the bottom, then who else are you going to be having sex with if you want to be a top?
Speak on it.
There needs to be someone who's receptive and someone who's, being active. So the concepts are all rooted in just unhealthy ways of thinking about ourselves. And if we think about ourselves in unhealthy ways, we project that onto others. And that's where I'm on this mission to have every Black gay man in Atlanta in therapy. I provide, discount counseling for Black gay men. I'm happy to continue doing that. I just think we need to deal with the traumas that impact us and cause us to not be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so very much for
You are
sharing
so welcome.
all of that with us. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do this again really soon, because I think it's so important. So tell us
hopefully next time I'll have a haircut too.
Oh, okay. Tell the people how they can get in contact with you.
So I am on Instagram at Relationship and Sex Doc. Please follow. I'm on Facebook at Therapy for You. If you want to go to my website, it's www.sextherapyforyou.com. I am on Spotify. If you want to download my podcast, Let's Come Together, Come CUM, with a sex doc. And all of this information is on my Instagram. So if you go to Instagram at Relationship and Sex Doc, you can get all this information. Reach out, like, share, DM me. If you're interested in having any kind of counseling, I'll be happy to give you a discount. And there's also a complimentary 15-minute consultation that I do as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Machel. I can't thank you enough. This has been wonderful. And I'm sure it's going to be beneficial to a lot of folks that are watching.
Thank you so much.